last
I
night,
think Minnesota
The roads are
skips
really
on spring and
treacherous.
fall,
Well, it does,
especially spring.
Reminded me of
Like,
growing up in
you know,
Missouri.
where it heats up
Driving
in
from
May and
Stillwater,
stuff.
just to have it up.
I mean, even
Yeah.
10 years ago, when I used to
Snow.
work at the flower mart, I
Who
was
said this
outside
weather or
working
the-
during that time of year, so I really
State Patrol said there were 300 tractors,
good
120
memory
spin-offs
of
yesterday.
and understanding of, and I can remember like Memorial Day freezing my buns off, and now it's,
My son
you
is
know,
coming home from,
so.
he said he saw three crashes
Right,
just
because
after
you lived in the whole years until you got there. Newsfeed tells you there's a crash in the area. And it says,
It changes so fast.
every so often. But
One
you're
of
also
the
closer to
benefits
the
of being
ocean.
on
I
the
don't know
worship
if that would
committee
happen
is
because
that
it
you
mitigates-
get electronic copy of the whole order of service, so you can just follow along and
Still,
look,
that's closer.
look ahead and what's
I
next.
mean, you know, when
We
I
could
think
sell
of
that as a
my
selling
brother,
point.
my sister,
Yeah,
you know, my
you
sister
can actually see what
lives
the.
right, in Finger Lakes, right, my brother,
Yeah.
lives in
Well, that's-
Burlington, Vermont, and they're
Yeah,
both.
our history is, yeah, we may or may
But
not.
they,
This
there
is
is no question about it.
always a
that
rough draft.
the ocean still affects their climate compared to us here in the center.
I keep forgetting to ask you, am I on this interest of people for the religious education committee?
Yes, and we
But
just,
it gets,
when you mentioned
we-
I was gonna talk to you about this too, when you mentioned you could have a retreat and so forth, I was just kind of like postponing, cause I figured we need to have some conversations about the retreat and what we're gonna be doing revision
Right,
before
right.
we start planning education. Cause the education part could be part of
I
that,
can think of
so
numerous
that's the reason I asked.
springs where there was snows at the end of April.
here.
Yeah, yeah.
You're on my list.
We about,
Yeah, I don't remember.
I think we're on.
My son was-
Everybody should, you know.
I need to know.
Oh, sorry. Come, come, whoever you are, wonder, worshiper, lover of leaving. Ours is no caravan of despair. Come, yet again, come. Come, come, whoever you are, wanderer, worshiper, lover of leaving. Ours is no caravan of despair. Come, yet again, come.
Good morning.
Good morning.
So all that snow we sung about on the solstice and Christmas Eve, it came. Not all of it, but some of it, right? So happy winter finally, maybe? I don't know. Glad that you're here. I don't see a lot of unfamiliar faces, so just as a reminder, we have our basket in the back for giving, and if you have any loose change, we have that jar in the back over here. We give to charity. So that's my mandatory giving announcement, as well as you can give online, and that is on our website. The next announcement that I want to make is just to remind everyone, and feel free to share this with people who may be gone because it's a holiday. Next Sunday after church, we're doing the postponed open house at our place. And I know Chuck sent out the address with MailChimp, but you can certainly see me if you need my address to come. And we'll have somebody at the door, somebody, probably Josh, at the door downstairs in the apartment building to guide you toward where we are. So, and just come and hang out. We'll have some refreshments and some just visits. I'm looking forward to that. It's a long time in coming since last month. Well, not last month. Jesus, it feels like we've been in the holidays for like 4 months, I don't know. Anyway. Long holiday season, I'm waiting for the holidays to get over so I can rest. Any other announcements that anybody might have to share with the community?
Chuck and I have been, and a few others, have been involved throughout the years in a group called Common Good. And our goal is to try to bring together people from different faiths and find out what we have in common, and maybe just get to know each other a little bit better and bring relationships to a different level, I guess, is one way to say it. Our next event is going to be in-person event in January. It's a Monday, I believe it's the 25th, is that right?
I'm not sure.
I'll double check on that. But the 25th at River Hills Methodist Church in the evening, and we'd love it if anybody is interested in joining us.
Other announcements? Oh, Jim.
Tonight, if everybody's welcome to come, we're just doing a New Year's Eve gathering at our house. If you didn't see the email, it went out.
Thank you for your hospitality. Others? Okay, well, happy New Year's Eve. Let us take a moment to center ourselves, rid ourselves as much as we possibly can of the chaos of the holidays and everything else in the world, and enjoy this time of meditation. All those who are able, please rise and join me in our opening words. The 1st of January is another day dawning, the sun rising as the sun always rises, the earth moving in its rhythms.
with or without our calendars, to name a certain day as a day of new beginning, separating the old from the new.
So it is. Everything is the same, bound into its history, as we ourselves are bound.
Yet also we stand at the threshold, the new year, something truly new, still unformed, leaving a stunning power in our hands.
What shall we do with this great gift of time this year?
Let us begin by remembering that whatever justice, whatever peace and wholeness might bloom in our world this year,
We are the hearts and minds, the hands and feet, the embodiment of all the best visions of our people.
the new year can be new ground for the seeds of our dreams.
Let us take the step forward together onto new ground.
Planting our dreams well, faithfully, and in joy.
In the spirit of the new year and the renewal of our planted dreams, we light this chalice as a community and say together,
May the light we now kindle inspire us to use our powers, to heal with love, to help with compassion, to bless with joy, to serve you, Spirit of freedom, in the fullness of community.
Now I invite you to join us in our first hymn, hymn number 55. Please be seated. We gather together as a community of seekers to honor the interdependence of life, to respect the dignity of all, and to honor the land we humbly walk upon. Friends, let us acknowledge that we now stand and sit upon the traditional territories of the indigenous people, the Dakota, for whom this very county and congregation are named, and others, the members of the original nations of this land, who continue to cry out for justice, preservation, and self-determination. We are blessed with a space, a community, and opportunities to strive to live out our common principles, to bring justice, equity, and compassion into our daily lives, to resist all that threatens the earth and her people, and to live out our dream of a world community of peace, liberty, and justice for all. Let these thoughts carry us forth as we journey and worship together. And now this is the time where you're invited to come forward if you so choose to light a candle for a joy and or a concern. And at the end I will light a final candle for those that remain unspoken.
My mom and dad have some issues with the weather.
With the weather.
Really?
With the weather? There you go.
Yes, me too.
Can't hear.
Well, this is for two birthday joys. For those of you that know my daughters Kara and Leah, Kara's birthday's today. She's 52. I can't believe it when I say it. And Leah her birthday was the 27th, and she's got one more year in her 40s, so they are joy in my life.
It's a long way around this table. So I'll start with a few concerns. The last part of November, I lost three people close to me passed. One was I've known her for 50 years, a teacher I taught with for many, many years. The other was my aunt, my last living aunt or uncle, and then my sister-in-law. And so, I had COVID that week, and I couldn't attend either one of their funerals. And then, but I got to watch my sister-in-law's funeral on TV, on computer, because it was on YouTube. Anybody wants to know. Anyway, it was a beautiful, beautiful service. And so, the wheel keeps turning, doesn't it? Sometimes those things happen. And, but I had a wonderful Christmas with my family, my two sons and their spouses. And then, so a cousin is the oldest son of that aunt, is a stand-up comedian. And he had a show at Turtles in Shakopee, and it was hilarious. There were 4 different performers, so that's a joy.
Yeah.
I'm gonna light a candle for the holidays that we had were joyful. They were just the right amount, I think, of not too extravagant, but well done, prepared, and everybody had a good time. And I'd also like to light a candle for all of the folks that have passed in the last year. CBS Sunday Morning always has a lovely remembrance of celebrities and notable people. And there were a lot of good ones that we lost. And so this is for all of the passing celebrities as well as everybody else who has passed this past year.
I'll now light a final candle for all those joys and concerns that remain unspoken. I always get the difficult candle. May we know that whatever befalls us in life, we are held in the loving embrace of this community. And now we say together for those with unspoken joys and concerns,
We hold you in our hearts.
I'm going to share a reading with you that was written by actually a friend of mine. Her name's Diane. She's the chair of, or was the chair of the Franciscan Mountain Community, and this is in Tennessee. She is an amazing theologian, and I wish to share her thoughts with you. Perhaps you have wondered, as I have, what that mountain phrase, making all things new, means. I'm sure that it means more than just one thing, but when rolling those words around in our minds, we can hear echoes of various religious and philosophical traditions. For some, it's a literal reflection of the book of Revelations. For others, it recalls the Zen tradition of the beginner's mind, a practice which encourages all of us to approach each moment with curiosity and fresh eyes. When I try to understand it, I form a picture in my mind of the way the world looks after a storm. Everything fresh and sparkling, washed clean and full of possibility. Making all things new calls us to face the world in a stance of optimism and open-heartedness. This unusual way of approaching life is so counterintuitive that it requires determination and strength to do so regularly. Making all is a call to action. It is not a passive observation. It is a choice we make daily to believe in others and in the possible, in order to deny past hurts and disappointments, the power to reduce our expectations of one another and of the wider world. Making all things new asks us to seek relationships that challenge us to let down our guards and let others in. Not expecting the same old pain, but expecting a new harmony, expecting the best in one another. It is a way of not giving up on the world, not seeing it for age-old patterns of discord, but facing it as full of potential, rejecting the idea that it is a lost cause. What happens when we turn our hearts to seeing all things new? We see all people as kin. We have fresh expectations that we can and will relate to one another peacefully. We see our earth as if it were newly born, fascinating and precious, not battered and existing as something to take advantage of. We see the forgotten and dismissed people around us, the odd people that have made mistakes as if they were children, brimming with potential, not yesterday's failures. We see ourselves as people who overcome, people who grow and change, people full of love's potential. When we see all things as new, we turn to one another for the strength and encouragement needed to be continually guided by optimism that we can and should do better. When exhaustion threatens to hijack our openness, we find compassions to remind us that the world and all it contains is new each and every day. Seeing all things as new requires community to hold the ideal of the new, because inevitably we falter and require others to hold it for us until our strength is renewed. But that need works both ways. Our communities need us too. They need us to expect better, to believe in grace, to believe that each and every one of us has merit, is deserving of love, and deserves the right to hope. When we see all things as new, we peel back the odd habits of restraint, cynicism, and dismissiveness to expose the fresh, uncompromising hope that reveals the face of the divine in our world and in one another. Well, usually you hear me talk about chickens, but this morning you're going to hear me talk about geese. So write that down somewhere. I'm not talking about chickens. There was a really interesting story that unveiled itself, and many of you may have seen it somewhere on social media, but there was a pair of geese, domestic geese, that lived near a cemetery in Iowa. This is a true story. And they had been together, these geese, this pair of geese, for like 15 years. And nobody could really remember how these two domestic geese found their way into this neighborhood and on this lake. But after that 15 years or so, the male passed away in his old age. And so people were, sort of following them almost like a little bit of a cult, They were like the inspiration in this small town in Iowa, but in, a good way. But they were overwhelmingly saddened and said, this is the end of an era. Now what are we going to do? And many of us kind of go through that. I mean, I know I do when I see, as Chuck was mentioning earlier, many of the celebrities have passed this year and years before, and that's recognized. And I'm thinking every time I see a major celebrity that I grew up with as a kid, I'm like, oh, wow. Another one? I mean, Betty White was a big deal to me. And many others. And so, not that geese are the same, but this small town with not much else going on besides corn, then really kind of like looked at this, as their little extension of family. So the actual manager of the cemetery and, the building where the empty gravestones are kept so you can go and shop for them, said, I've just got to do something, because this female goose that's been left comes up to the building and looks in the glass to see a reflection. She was so lonely. So she ended up, the director of the cemetery, putting an ad out on Facebook, and it was really interesting, and I wish that I had a copy of it, but for brevity's sake, just want to say it was like the female goose was like advertising herself for a dating app, right? And so it talked about how she was looking for a companion, for, association, and I think the word was shenanigans from time to time. Well, lo and behold, there was a couple that were not far from the community that had a farm, and they had a pair of geese, the female of which had recently died. So, it does have a good end here. So his name, by the way, the female's name was Blossom. I remember that. And then the male's name was Frankie. So they brought Frankie in and took him out of his cage, and Blossom welcomed him with open wings. I remember seeing that in print. And so that's where the story kind of ended. They walked off together, and that was beautiful. But the story then turned around not too long ago. This was in the fall. They were wonderful and having a great time, and everybody was just celebrating this new couple, and things are not ever over until they're over, right? But there had been a domestic duck who had laid a bunch of eggs, and nobody knew where the male was, and she was sitting on the eggs, and then for some reason she disappeared. Maybe a predator, maybe, I don't know. And so these eggs were in the midst of hatching when she disappeared. So likely she was trying to lure a predator away from that. I know that has happened with me when I've raised chickens. I had to fit that in there, chickens. And so this pair of geese came up on them, and the story continues. They raised these baby ducklings. In their old age and their old ways and their new ways, they raised a species that wasn't even like them. Now, if you don't know how unusual that is, it's very unusual in that many different interspecies will not be able to relate. I've tried to use chickens to hatch out duck eggs, and works for a while, but then the ducks say, well, these people are not like me, so I'm gonna go somewhere else. But they were a family, and the ducks all stayed, they're all still there. Now, what does this story have to do with making all things new? Well, I think you probably could follow the trajectory of my thought by saying lots of things happen unexpectedly. Lots of events occur, and, maybe like a solstice event where, the room is so packed that it gets hot in the midst of winter, that might happen. And many of these unexpected occurrences give us a new and renewed sense of hope. To make all things new also requires us to think about things beyond those pieces of our past, either as a congregation or individually, that still give us trauma and hurt. It is not to ignore that. I'm sure that Blossom was not ignoring her trauma when she accepted Frankie into her life for a new and renewed relationship. But we must think about how things are moving forward and what unexpected things can happen. Who might come into our midst, into our individual lives and our congregation's life, who may be abandoned, who may feel a sense of hopelessness, who may feel a type of way that we don't even particularly understand ourselves, but we know that in our humanity, our common humanity, that we can reach out and love and share that light, that spark that we should pass on, see how I worked that in there, together to be able to renew and think about things in different ways. I know that I have only been here a relatively short amount of time. That was something that I thought about after I left Christmas Eve service last week. I'm like, wow, this is so cool. And I feel like I've been in this congregation for like 3 or 4 years. But it's only been since May. That's 7 months. And I, myself, if I turn what I've just said inward, realize that, wow, this is nothing like I expected it to be. I am so awed by the overwhelming hospitality and the willingness of this congregation to make things new, to allow new things. Now, that doesn't mean that all of a sudden change is no longer difficult. We all know that. Because there are many challenges that come with different events and new, unexpected things. It's difficult to change. It's difficult to get through the growing pains. It was such an honor to be able to be a part of this holiday celebration that we just walked through together. And as Chuck said earlier, it wasn't too extravagant, but it was pretty awesome and pretty fun. It was exhausting, but in a good way. How many people have said that? It's exhausting, but in a good way. I'm tired, but it's a good tired. That coffee helped me this morning. How do we make all things new? How and why do we do that? Well, we have a message. We have several messages. We have probably an infinite amount of messages of hope and love to share from this community. Because we are a type of family that says, come on in. We'll make room for you, and we'll change a little bit, maybe not a lot, but change a little bit so that we can allow for your exceptional uniqueness. And for those of us that may have grown up in communities of faith which didn't do that, we recognize just how amazing that is. So to make all things new means also to move around, to open up a space for people, to widen the circle to say, look, we don't know you yet, but come on in. The water's fine, or the snow is fine, or however you want to say it. And that's kind of how Blossom, I think, probably welcomed Frankie in. Come on in, the water's fine, even though it was probably frozen by that time. Or maybe it thawed out. But anyways, that's a different story for Super El Nino talk. What my point among all of these different things I'd like to make sure that I impress upon this community is that as we embark on this brand new year, and I've heard it said so many times, and it's also already caused me a little bit of nausea, let's do more in 24. That's almost as bad as New Year, New Me. I don't even know how I could do more in 24. I'm already pressed. But I think that we have a lot that we are going to do in 2024. And it's not just about New Year, new things, making all things new, just because of the spirit of newness. I mean, there is always that. We can start over. It's okay to start over. But I don't think that's where we are. I think it is where we are that we can see into the future that there is hope. There is life in this congregation, and beyond all things, there is an exceptional amount of love and compassion and openness and amazingness. And while I don't want to always get up here and just say, oh, look how wonderful you are, and I know that could be problematic and cultish, right?
We wouldn't mind.
These are what's that? I love it. See? But I don't want to stop there because I think that there are people, even out on the internet somewhere, across the world, who are hungry for this kind of faithful community. People that can't come here in person, expanding our ideology that communities of faith are not just for in person anymore. I'm not sure that they ever were. If we think about even doing a little historical theology here, the effect that certain religious leaders thousands of miles away can have, like the Pope, on a community in Africa, we can have the kind of influence in probably a completely different way to people who are all across the world, who don't have access to be able to come in person. That's just one of the pieces of making all things new. Trying to expand our own psychological horizons so that we widen the circle to the point where we never thought we would. Where we thought maybe there was no future in what we were doing. There's hard to get people in the seats. Well, we proved that wrong at the solstice service. But maybe we just got to do it differently. Maybe we're going to think outside the box. Maybe we got to do all these cliche things. But making all things new starts with the foundation of love. And that's why we're not starting over, because we already have that. And I really appreciate the kind of community that this is. And I want to spread that love, pass on the spark throughout the entire world. And I hope that you do too. Because as we make all things new, we have to look at things in a completely different way, which may be so troubling in some ways, it may be terrifying in other ways. But at the same time, we know that there's so much love that we have to give to everyone that we want to make sure that it's open, just like Blossom welcomed Frankie into the lake. May it be so. Chuck's going to lead us, or he's going to share some music with us.
All right, here we go. like a stone. We have yearned, we have yearned. We have sometimes felt so utterly alone. While we turn, while we turn, we've been stricken by the wonder of it all. Stricken down, stricken down. We have sometimes felt so faint we want to fall. Overcome, all in all. I'd say this year in flight together has been fun. What say we make one more circle round the sun? We have raised our fist in anger and we've tried to work it out, to work it out. That we need each other we cannot deny. There is no doubt, there is no doubt. So let's weave another dream in outer space while we're turning, while we're turning on this planet that holds our human race. We are still learning, but all in all, I'd say this year in flight together has been fun. What say we make one more circle round the sun? I'd say this year in flight together has been a good one. What say we make one more circle, one more circle, one more circle round the sun.
Thank you, Chuck. And this is the time where, we haven't done this in a while, given the holiday celebrations. So this is a time of reflection where we can share our thoughts.
Well, I thought about, as you were talking about making all things new, about the problem I have in singing a song or doing a performance is to let go of the last phrase and focus on what I'm doing right this moment. Because a lot of times I'm going along and I'm going, oh, that chord was wrong or whatever, and you can't do anything about it right now, you know. So I think that for me is a lesson on a lot of things is just put the past in the past and let it, you know.
Do you think it's more critical now that we do new things than it has in the past? Because I was focusing in on climate change, which is, you know, I mean, the whole El Nino this year and everything like that. I mean, it's just, it's creepy. And so, you know, or wars, or, I mean, has it gotten worse, and do we, you know, or is it just the same old circle around the sun?
They say the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over, expecting different results. So that's a different way of answering that question.
Right.
But I think so.
And the world is pretty darn insane. At least now.
Well, my brother goes on and on about people who use their frontal lobes and people who still are using their reptilian brain. And if we could get more people using their frontal lobes, maybe we would be a little bit better off.
Clearly, the problem is we just keep going around and around the sun. Like, what do you expect? Clearly, we need to reverse it.
Careful what you wish for.
Yeah, maybe we should try going the other way.
I feel an apocalyptic movie in the making.
Or Superman.
Right.
Just getting all wound up, because we're going the same.
I've been thinking a lot about this in terms of like relationships, and the way that I like to view relationships is like you're in a room and then some people trickle in and then they trickle out. But what I thought about when you were, talking was, allowing myself to be receptive to the new people coming in, and not thinking about the past and maybe people left in a very abrupt manner this past year, and not allowing that to take away from the new people that are coming in.
Look at, when I talk about all things change, I feel like, well, that's breaking normal. And everybody just wants to go back to normal, whatever that is for them. But what they're not realizing or thinking about is that normal is a constant change. Everything is changing. And so it's just the amount or how big those changes occur. I mean, you go to the store and, oh, they don't have this anymore. Small change, not very earth-shattering. But when you lose a job, lose somebody, somebody's born, those are big events. And now there's a big adjustment to a bigger change.
Well, people say don't sweat the small stuff. It's the small stuff that drives me crazy. I can handle the big stuff, usually. But the store not carrying what they've been carrying is.
On the other hand, Deb, sometimes it's the small stuff that gives you joy and that keeps you,
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
Well, and sometimes the big stuff gets pushed down a little bit, and the small stuff is the straw that breaks the camel's back, right?
But it's not really that small thing
Right,
that's bothering you.
it's really the big thing that you stuffed in there. And,
Good point, yeah.
yeah.
right, so the bale of straw was really what, not that final piece of
Right.
straw. It was the bale of straw that was on there before.
Yep.
So change is the only constant we have.
Mm-hmm.
And things can change fast. Look at the changes in the acceptance of people who are different.
We're all different.
Exactly.
It's so ironic,
Mm-hmm,
like the fear-based reactions when you perceive somebody more different than the same. And then that just cascades out of control.
It's that reptilian brain again.
What would a lizard say to that?
Run.
Or freeze.
Or fight, yeah.
Make a commercial.
Well, especially after spending so much time with the grandkids over the past couple of weeks and watching them, that point about, becoming childlike with change and openness to whatever is just, it's something I've been noticing, and that's a really good thing to aspire to. Because, watching the kids, and this suspension of judgment. It's not, is it good, is it bad? It's, how does it work? What does it do? Where does it go? Why do you have it? Blah, 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 blah. And, they're really not prepared to, oh, that's good, that's bad, that's, beneficial, that's detrimental. They just want to understand it, And I think, I think that would be a good thing if I could really cultivate that, just.
They're taking the time to learn about it, absorb it,
Well, and the kids
before
haven't had
making that judgment.
and the kids haven't had a chance to get into a rut yet, because everything is new.
Yeah.
Which is another Peter Mayer song.
That's right.
Yeah.
Which is a wonderful, yeah.
That often reminds me of when we talk about looking at the world and attacking problems like children, the different kinds of social media memes that I've seen over the years where racism is something that's taught, where if you just put kids together, and it's like whatever, sexism is taught, homophobia is taught, all of that. And there is a certain redeeming quality in being able to do some healthy regression sometimes.
Right.
Come on into the sandboxes. Let's just do this.
I think sometimes we get so caught up in our life that we don't realize that like the status quo is like a choice. We are making specific choices each day, and that if that change is going to happen, that we are going to have to make those conscious choices, but that we already are making those conscious choices to maintain the status quo. And
I've been learning about complex PTSD the last month or two, and talk about making choices and change, and realizing where change is going to happen just because my awareness is shifted. But I'm so afraid I'll forget it, that I'll go back to a normal where status quo was, because that's my rut, and forget what I learned, or forget this new aha thing that's started to also be really uncomfortable and unravel things. And then over the holidays with people that have made choices that were really painful, I felt like I had no skin, like just filleted. But with the hope of it being good change, though change sucks, some parts of it hurt like crazy, but it's necessary. I'm just listening in the collision of all this with status quo and change and choice. And I came in wondering when you started speaking, that how do you know that when you realize something you want to change in yourself, that that you stick with it without losing track of it, without slipping back into whatever normal was. Like, I don't want to think like that person anymore. But how did I get here? How did that happen? How can I rewire everything that's put me where I am? And then am I doing this to make me better, or am I doing this because that's what I need to do to get along with the rest of my culture? Or is that something I want to do? It's messy.
Take it slow though, right?
It's slow, no.
No?
I'll bite the whole elephant down. Blend it, put it in the blender. Yeah, I hear you though, but I know that's.
Give me patience, I want it now.
And this is coming full circle, kind of back to what Jim said, to kind of wrap the conversation up. When you said something about when the store doesn't carry it anymore, I'm still stuck there, because almost as bad is when they move stuff around.
Right.
And that's kind of how I think about faith communities, especially when we change the order of service, or we, you know, do something different, or, you know, oh, well, we've never done it that way before, and, oh, I'm resistant to it. Well, I'm definitely resistant to when the grocery store puts what I'm looking for on the other side of the store, and I have to walk all the way over there. First world problem.
Especially when you don't know where to walk to.
Yeah, right, exactly. And then, God forbid, you have to ask somebody where something is, because
Right.
you know we don't do that.
And then the same week, Target reorganizes too.
Oh, shame.
Or
I tell you,
I just
sad
wanna-
story.
I had a store thing, went to get toothpicks or something in the paper plate section. And there were underwear and makeup and you know, I don't remember, toilet bowl cleaner, it's just all this stuff, like, people got to that section and changed their mind and decided to dump. And I was finding this in several places, so much more than I usually do when I'm shopping. But back in that paper plate section, there was just all kinds of weird stuff. I thought about, well, maybe this is just the theme is chaos.
Mischief.
That's how it felt.
Shenanigans.
So, I now have anxiety when I go to Hy-Vee, which is just a mile away, because
It's too big.
I have to ask about 3 times where to find stuff. And the gal that was so kind and helpful said that she has been speaking to the suits upstairs all the time about it, and they do nothing. There's rice in at least 2 places, there's flour in 3 places, and anyway, and on and on. But that's a first world problem.
Just confirmation, yeah, I have the same problem with Hy-Vee. Whoever organizes that store does not think like I do. But I stopped a Hy-Vee employee the other day and said, "Now, where is the oat bran?" And she said, "I have an app on my phone, there's an app on your phone, you can download." And she's just like, "I can never find anything in this store."
Sometimes I'm in the store and call them to send someone over to help me.
I've gotten lost in Hy-Vee.
Okay.
I just don't go there.
We stay away from Hy-Vee.
Yeah.
That's a whole other sermon.
That's
Yeah.
what I love. You don't tell me that.
Or analogy,
In
or
middle
whatever
things, there's
was coming up so much. Recovery from groceries.
That meets on Wednesday nights at 6:30.
We Publix.
That's what I was gonna say, this could all be solved if we just had a
Oh,
Publix.
These are first world problems.
Yes, right.
So-
Jim, go ahead.
I was gonna say, so Brian, you said, you know, you had to do more in '24, and you just didn't know how to fit it in. You do know you have a whole extra day
Oh, I
on
forgot.
February 29th this year, so you can get a lot done.
On that note, let us all rise and sing our closing hymn. Number 12.
Maketh all things new, the blooming earth our thoughts within, our
my friends, my family, the holidays are coming to a close, but don't forget, I'm leaving my holiday decorations up until next Sunday because you all are coming over. Hard work. But as we embark on this new year, I hope that we can all continue our journey together individually as well as communally and move us into all the things that we can possibly imagine that will renew and restoke the fire that we sparked on the solstice. Go in peace.
I had rejected much of my personal upbringing, but
Especially
this is
because
the
you were
amen chord at the end of some hymns.
How did that go?
That one.
Okay. Oh, are you really? Okay, okay. Oh, okay. Well, you're still really, you know what, it occurred to me, you said you were 21st and 40. Okay. Okay. Oh, you must have birthday. You forgot. I forgot. That's okay with me. I'm quite a bit older, but anyways.
No, my mind.
Okay. Oh, did you? Okay. Yeah, I know. You know, I know a lot of kids that went. Was it really? My family's big problem. Yeah, that's sister. No, but you know, it's interesting because I've lived in Minnesota for years, but I spent my teenage years in Vermont. And I still consider myself not because they're so passive aggressive. They're provincial and they're passive aggressive. It's like that. So are you still going to? No, you would be finished with it, but you stayed. But he lives in the AI.
So my organization